This conference will now be recorded.
We're short a couple of commission members, but what's new? We always list a few. Okay, all right. We'll call our first quarter Heber City Historic Preservation Commission meeting to order. We'd like to welcome you all here, and we'll start with the roll call. So, Michael Sider, Harvey Horner, Ron Carlisle, Commission Chairman. We'd like to excuse Catherine Dalton, who's away, and also McKay King and Christy Bond may be joining us, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, we'd like to approve the meeting minutes from October. We don't have them up, but I sent those out. Do you have any objections, or? I think we'll go ahead and approve those. Motion that we approve those. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. All right, I hope you have our agenda. We're going to go through a few housekeeping things first. Going to reserve the bulk of the time for Kirk Huffaker at the end. But first of all, I'd like to hear from Harvey Horner, who is doubling on our commission, but also represents the Sons of the Utah Pioneers. So go ahead, Harvey.
I'm doubling because we do the same things, and it's just we've had for the past 5 years, Dan Adams, a really fine man who has been coming up from Orem to run the Mountain Valley chapter of the Sons of the Utah Pioneers. And he pulled me aside and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm pushing 87 and I coming up all the time. Somebody needs to do it locally, and we should have been doing it before. So I was called to be the president of that, and I'm the president at this time. He's serving as the past president, and Randall Probst is on our committee, and he is the president elect that will be at next year. We have this fully organized now. Our secretary is Jeff Bradshaw, and our program directors are Marvin Rust, George Pitts, and Sheldon Case. And we meet monthly for a meeting with all of the leaders, and every second Thursday we have a presentation on some kind of a history thing that deals with the valley. And the next one will be a presentation that George Pitts will be doing on the Moulton family. The part of the Willie Handcart Company will be talking about that, and lots of people up here related to that Moulton family and the Murdoch family. So anyway, that's what we do, and I just wanted to report some of the things that are happening. The National Association wants to hold in Heber Valley an encampment on 2027. That would probably mean anywhere from 500 to 800 people, and our little group is supposed to put together that encampment, the plans, but it could bring quite a bit of revenue in for the days that they're going to be here. Be the last part of September, a Thursday and Friday and Saturday, the last of September 2027. So we'll be working on that. We're also doing a piece in the magazine that talks about or shows a lot of historical homes and some early history. A lot of those have been written, but it's never been published in their what they call the Pioneer Magazine, and they'll be coming up. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but I'll be getting with some of you to make sure we get the highlights. We can't do everything because the book would be maybe that thick. I don't know, but that's one of the things that we're doing. And all of you, any of you who would like to come, you don't have to necessarily be a member. We'd like you to be if you stay, but you're invited to come to any of the presentations we have. It's on the second Thursday of every month, and at 7 o'clock at the Senior Citizen Center. And last week, you tell them what we learned last week.
We learned about grist mills and flour mills in the state of Utah, and it was pretty interesting.
And the earliest ones that were here in the valley, there were 3 that were here and 1 in Wallsburg that we talked about. I thought I knew all about that, but I found out I didn't. There were some I didn't know about. I had a great grandfather that worked in the Heber mill. It was more than a grist mill. It did all of the separations. And in fact, I remember as a young boy that that was still there and still running. I guess that tells you how old I am.
So that's where the mill road comes from that grist mill, or that mill that
Yeah,
used
you
to be
can
there.
see pictures of that Vernon Murdoch made everywhere. And that's how I remember it. He did a wonderful job of capturing that. So that's something that ought to be preserved at least. Maybe the mill should have too, but
Maybe that site.
it's
yes.
too late now for that. But at least you can see, I don't know if it's over in one of those, probably not, but you've seen those pictures of the old Heber mill. And my great grandfather worked there till he passed away. So that was my claim to fame there. So that, I think, unless you have any other questions about the Sons of the Utah Pioneers, what we do, we try to cooperate with the Daughters of the Utah Pioneers. But any of you are welcome to just come to any of those presentations. And we used to put them in the Wave all the time, but now to advertise that, we have to do it by word of mouth. And hopefully, if any of you want to come to those and you like them, you can have other people come. If you want to join Sons of Utah Pioneers, I think you have to be a son, but everybody brings their wives. Well, they each only have one wife, but they they bring their wife with them, and you're all welcome. And if you choose to want to join that, that's another thing. And it's all things that we're doing to try to remember and teach the next generation history things that we want them to remember about the early pioneers in Heber Valley. So,
Could you elaborate more on your encampment? Is that a pioneer encampment, or is it similar to?
they call it an encampment, and I used to be the managing director at Heber Valley Camp when we were doing the finishing construction up there for several years, and I thought that would be a really good place for them to camp. But I was informed that no, they like to go to hotels, and they like to what we have to do is get things that we would like them to participate. See, most of these people, especially the national leaders, they're older than I am. So that's about just a little bit younger than, I don't know who's, maybe, anyway, some of the early people, most of them are in their 80s. And so they're not really keen into camping, but they call it an encampment, and they have a lot of, there's dinners they have together and meetings they have, and then they like to see the historical events, and that's where I'll come in with some of you and yeah, to visit some of the homes, and I know Rachel probably can help us with that. We'll be doing that we got almost little over a year, about almost 2 years to prepare for it. So, but I think that might be it'll be exciting for those people. They've never been to Wasatch County for one of those. They've been in Cache County and Utah County and other places, but this will be the first time they've come to Heber. So we're going to try to put together a historical, probably get them down to John Bessendorfer's farm and the one over in Wallsburg and ride the Heber Creeper and housing. I don't know exactly what they want to do now, but I think we've got, I don't know, does anybody know if the housing that we have in Heber now to accommodate something like that, would they have to go to Park City too? Do you think we got enough if we go to Midway? And there will be anywhere from 500 to 800 people. That's what I had in mind, is the Homestead area. Zermatt owns it all now, so we'll do that. And I guess the last thing, tell them to bring their sleeping bags and we'll take them up to Heber Valley Camp. So
How many individuals do they usually have?
about the last time they had it, there was like 780 people. So this will be so my little committee, my committee, I've already told you who that was, so I don't have to go through that again, but we'll be working together and maybe calling a few more to help us with some of those accommodation, getting that ready and getting a program that will make them feel good about being here and knowing a lot about Wasatch County. So I think that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
All right. Thank you, Harvey. I'm going to turn, Rachel, do you have anything from your end that you need with CAMS that we need to talk about?
Her job is booking and helping to book conventions like that. So she can help.
Jana Brown, and she's at the one up here north of town.
Yeah.
That's her office. Do you have her phone number?
To create hotel prices for conventions. So she can work with the Best Western, Holiday Inn, Zermatt, the Homestead, and create a booking so that if that convention were to come to town, they would all book
Mhm.
a certain reduced rate.
Yeah. Okay, then a place or two for them to eat and have big dinners. He said, usually we go to a steak center, but I'm not sure. They might want to do that in one of the hotels too. That takes care of the food preparation and all. Do you have her number, you say?
But that her job is.
I'll just go see her, find out where her office is. She's there, I guess,
Yeah.
8 hours a day, or
Yeah, unless she's out at a convention or.
we'll find that. Okay, I really appreciate that, Rachel. That'll be a help.
And she could be a point person just to really head up that convention. That's her role for Wasatch County is to.
Okay, I'll let her know about that and we'll start working with her. Thank you.
So Rachel Kaler, I'm the executive director of Community Alliance for Main Street. We do have a couple things coming up. Heber Valley Magazine has asked us to write a spring issue article focusing on the Heber Leadership Academy project that we finished last year. That's the historic plaques. And one of the things that I would ask of the Historic Preservation Commission is an opportunity to add additional properties. So currently we have 34 properties plus the 4 monument signs. So we call it a 37 site tour. And I've been spending at least once a month with senior citizens taking tour buses and going and visiting with Candy Bonner driving a 2-hour tour. So that people that might not be as mobile have the opportunity to see the different sites and hear the history of Heber. It's been interesting. We've had Donna Dayton was on our first tour that could give the tour herself. And then this last one, we had probably half of us was not from Heber Valley. Recent move-ins as near as October, they had just arrived. And to be able to tell the story of Heber Valley, the Mormon settlers, it really is exactly what we hope this tour would do. And that's telling the story of our historic preservation and the Mormon settlers. Even if they're not of that faith, they are gaining an appreciation of those original settlers. So I'm really pleased with how the historic tour has shaped itself. But I think there's an opportunity to continue to grow that tour The question that I would have for Preservation Commission or even the City Council is there an opportunity for additional funding? Each of those aluminum plaques costs anywhere from 500 to 700, depending on the quantity. We initially ordered 40 and have printed 40 plaques.
Mhm.
So the 3 that are remaining are the Crook cabin.
Mhm.
We pre-printed that plaque, as well as the Four-Weiler home, which is the project that Lane Midco is working on.
Mhm.
And we had to reprint the plaque because there was some verbiage that we had someone feel that it wasn't significant, so we made that change. So
Mhm.
we've already produced 40 plaques and have 2 of them awaiting installation. But my question and ask would be, can we add additional properties? And if so, what are the properties that we should add next? So we could look at a short list, we could put it out to the community, see if there's property owners. I appreciate Councilmember Barney, who directed Heidi Miller Highway. We were able to add Lindsay home to that tour. It was one of our last ads.
Oh,
It's a
great.
Beautiful historic home, and Heidi was really thrilled to be part of that first initial go. So it might be something that we put out to the public.
Mhm.
Are there historic homes that want to be on the tour that felt like, hey, you missed me, and I'm happy to have that plaque in front of my house?
Would that tour be something we could look to do with this group that's coming next year?
Yeah, it's a self-guided tour.
Okay,
We
so,
have both maps, we have online, we have 3 or 4 different websites, but the Utah Preservation app actually will give you the step-by-step. They have a 1 to 20.
so they could go in their own automobiles and be guided where it was, or if we had a bus, even maybe somebody could
Yeah, that's
say,
what I've been doing with the seniors. So we can take the senior bus up to 15 people, and I've been on a microphone giving them the history of each of those homes.
So I have a question.
Sure.
I remember, it's been a while, or they used to have a bus coming up from the Jameson, was it Jamestown nursing home down there? And they used to come up and get ice cream at, over at the trains, Dairy King and so forth. Do they still do that? Do they still come up every summer? Because I haven't seen it in a while, but I'm just wondering, in order to bring more highlights to the valley in that regards, maybe reaching out to those other senior citizen centers, and seeing if and it's a nursing home is what it is, but it's a assisted living, not even assisted living. I think some of them, it's just a partial assisted living. But they used to come up in a bus and they would take tours through the valley, get ice cream from the Dairy King. And I don't know if that's something that through the Senior Citizen Center, it's just a thought maybe, but that might help in bringing more revenue and more business to the community and to our business.
I think it's a great point. This walking tour is self-guided.
Mhm.
So they could actually follow along Preservation Utah's path. And if they had someone within their group, I know when I managed the Ice Castle, they had a group that came up and drove through the Ice Castle. Not really supposed to, but yeah, if someone wanted to head that recruiting effort up, I
Mhm.
don't believe that that's something from a CAM standpoint.
No,
or-
maybe not from CAMS, but more from someone else here. Just a thought.
And then finally, for 2026, we are still considering what our historic preservation effort will be. There's been discussed perhaps a coffee table book. I've been in touch with Alan Day and Lisa Filler up to see if they would be interested in putting something like that together. Obviously, it comes down to funding. Coffee table books are expensive to print on the front end, and is there a demand for it? So right now, that's a discussion that's happening within the CAMS board. But our efforts are really to support what Kurt Heber is going to do with preservation strategies and giving him tools and any assets. I just gave him the George Struggle collection that I was able to collect during the project last summer. And that is black and white photos that were taken by George Struggle from 1933 to the mid 1950s. And my ask is that Kurt and his team utilize those photos where applicable. But one thing to note, and he'll probably talk about this in his presentation, is his focus is downtown data on existing buildings. And a lot of those photographs are people and places that may not necessarily be tied to a location. So there is still a need within the Heber Historic Preservation movement to find a place to secure the assets that we're collecting, whether they be digital assets, photography, books and photos as people pass away. Do their family members want to preserve it? Or is it something that this commission is willing to start archiving? And that's something that Wasatch County has been discussing. In fact, they're looking at hiring a historian or an archivist and start that process of really safeguarding our historic assets through a hired full-time position. So that's my report. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but my ask this year would be an opportunity to add additional plaques. And if so, what properties should we highlight?
All right, thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, I've got one question. So these things that Marvin Rust has been, he's a member of our council too. Like he's doing something up to the cemetery and the, what is it, the Indian, I can't think of the, Chief Tabby, a statue of his, and then also his son's gravesite. They were doing things, and we're trying to work with him there. And there's some funds that have been allocated, but does he work with you with those things? That's kind of a different setup, but okay, I just wondered.
Yeah, my focus is really Main Street, and the only reason why we kind of led into the neighborhoods is it was part of the story of how the community originated. And so that's why we have properties as far as 400 North, but we have 19 properties on Main Street that are of historic nature. In fact, I failed to present, we are applying for a grant, the Revive and Reside grant. It's up to $50,000, and I'm working with Lisa Laird, who is the owner of Melvin's Pub. So
Tinks.
Sides Village for the Wasatch Saloon, as it was originally founded in 1901, 02, 03. It's the only property in our valley that could receive this type of funding. This is from the National Historic Registry, and it's our only commercial building that's currently on that. So as Kirk and his team finish, the goal would be to take the data that he's going to collect for us and make an application to put more properties on the National Registry, especially commercial properties, so that we can help those property owners with grants such as the Revive and Reside grant. So that one is due at the end of the month. So Melissa and I are looking at that.
Okay, good to know. All right. Just going through the rest of our agenda here, I did report to the city council last week, talked briefly about the Crook Cabin restoration project. That's ongoing as we speak. We're finishing up procuring logs, replacement logs for that, and then with the goal of eventually placing that on the site there on 2nd North and 1st West, where the Wasatch County offices are, and 1st East, excuse me. 1st East, yes, that's right.
It's pretty near that monument.
It's near the monument, the Chief Tabby Monument with the Joseph Stacy murder. That monument there is on the corner. This will be just adjacent to that.
To the east of it, or?
To the east of it, yes. So that's ongoing. I would like to, so this is our 1st quarter meeting for this year. I've made a calendar or dates for our remaining meetings, our quarterly meetings throughout the rest of the year. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 20th, then July 20th, then October 19th. Those are two of Mondays are fraught with holidays sometimes, so we have to kind of work around those things. So I think this does that. I would like to, I think informally, Yvonne Barney from our city council is going to be working with our commission, and we're excited to have you join us, Yvonne, and work with you. Oh,
I asked lots of questions.
That's good. That's good. All right. Anything else before we turn the time over to Kirk for his presentation? Okay, if not, Kirk, we'll turn this to you to present to us what is going to be happening here. You can either stand or sit, whatever you'd like.
I'm happy to stand here. Is this mic on? Yeah, working. Great. All right, we got our presentation up there. Thank you, Jacob. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for putting me on the agenda to formally get the reconnaissance level survey rolling. This is really meant to be an introduction and go a little bit in depth into what we're doing and more background on why we're doing it. And so my name's Kirk Huffaker. I'm principal of Kirk Huffaker Preservation Strategies. And there are two other team members in my employment that will be working on this as well. And you'll be seeing them in the future plenty as well. So Jacob, let's go to the next slide. So we're going to review several of these things as well as some details about how we're going to do the survey. So next slide. Let me just acknowledge that there are many partners in this. Of course, our State Historic Preservation Office, who will be reviewing the information that we submit and are the stewards of all the historic data that we all use and rely on. And so they're, of course, an important partner, of course, as a granting organization as well. The city and the city administration and their support, of course, is key to making this happen. You all with the Historic Preservation Commission being at the forefront of executing the mission of historic preservation here in the city and the Main Street program, CAMS and Rachel as well for their support in guiding the effort as well. So lots of partners that we endeavor to keep in communication with throughout the process. Next slide. Here are team members. Mason and Jessica were on our internal kickoff call that we had with the city a few weeks ago. And then Amber that we collaborate with on GIS on our larger projects, which we anticipate will be utilizing her as well. She's based in Fort Collins, Colorado, but is originally from Utah. So just a little introduction to our team there. So next slide. So really three main goals here. The first one being to ensure that whatever we collect with the reconnaissance level survey meets all the standards and protocols and practices that we that our State Preservation Office uses that come from the National Park Service. And so we want to ensure that whatever we do rises to that level and meets those standards. Second, we always want to have public participation, or at least the opportunity to do that, this meeting being one of those. And so whether it's a formal meeting like this, or we're just coming across people while we're on the street, that's sort of an informal public participation when they just come up and ask us what we're doing and why we're taking a picture of their house. We want to make sure that they understand what the process is and get them to the right people if they have questions about it. And then that last box is incorrect. Those dates are incorrect. Yeah, yes, that is about a year off. So yeah, we're completing field work by the end of summer, if not much before that. Field work, we are targeting for early spring to complete that. And we've roughed out 5 to 7 days of field work that we'll need to complete that. And then we'll have to come back and process all the data. So, but all the field work in the field should be done within about 5 to 7 business days. All right, let's move on to the next one. Yeah. Well, part of it is the data processing, but then also the research and the writing and just balancing it with the other projects we have. Yeah.
Burke, could
Yes.
you, field work, what that entails, you said from the street, just for our knowledge.
I have a slide on
Oh,
that.
okay. I'm jumping the
So-
gun here, sorry.
Good job, Ron. You're on top of it. That's okay. So let's just revisit a few bullet points on what is a reconnaissance level survey. And really this is the first look or the first take on a wide swath or a large area that has historic resources in it, like a neighborhood or a community. Of course, this isn't the first reconnaissance level survey, but it's the first in a long time. So you approach it almost like a new survey, even though we do have existing data. And so this, of course, we're dealing with over 1,000 properties in this survey. So this is the most effective tool to conduct that and collect that information. And so this is really a visual identification of historic buildings and historic character in a neighborhood. And so, and I'll enumerate those as Ron has asked me to do in a future slide. So we'll talk about what that visual evaluation entails. And then the whole thing, does get written up and we produce data, label photographs, and it ends up with a report with recommendations that talks about intensive level surveys, future National Register nominations, whether they be individual or historic districts, public education opportunities, and then the financial aspects of the benefits of doing preservation that results from those. Next slide. So our scope of work is to survey, do that field work for over 1,000 properties and collect that data, conduct research that can take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of those properties as well as the community as a whole to present a context for the historic architecture of the community. And within that, we divide the community into contextual periods, historical periods over time when we see major shifts in the history and or architecture of the community. Then we present those results to the public with that final, well, actually the final reports first, and you all will review that. The HPC, we ask for feedback on that as well as the staff, and then present those results to the public. Here are sort of the step-by-step tasks that we do that are involved in the reconnaissance level survey. And so here we're getting more into that sort of bullet pointed list of how we do things. So in data collection, we do the field work, all from the public right of way. We don't enter onto people's property unless they invite us. Which sometimes they do. They really, if they want to show off their house or, show us something really interesting, that's great, and we'll note that in the notes of the survey. And we conduct our evaluation. We do photographic documentation, as I mentioned, research, the final report, which has an analysis of the data we collected. So, how many Victorian buildings did we find? How many modern buildings? How many pioneer era buildings? So we do a pretty deep analysis of things like that, as well as materials, years of construction, and that sort of thing. We map all of the properties, so they are coded for easy visualization. We do a whole series of review and comments from not only the staff, the HPC, but also the SHPO. And once we get all of that, we compile all of that into a final document for approval. Here is our survey boundary. which does encompass on 3 sides, both sides of the street, actually on all 4 sides, I see. Yes, we have not split it right down the middle of the street, but actually extended the boundary to the other side of the boundary street. So we'll collect data from both sides of those streets on the outside. And then, of course, everything in the middle. This is what we consider a comprehensive survey. So it is every property within the boundary. The other option you would have is a selective survey where you would draw a boundary such as this and then say, only select the properties to survey that meet certain criteria. So if you said, we only want properties older than 1940, then we would only go through and select the properties in the boundary that are older than 1940. In this case, it's comprehensive, everything older than 1976 or 50 years older than now within the boundary. Does that make sense? Okay, comprehensive. All right, these are one by one. So if you just, yeah. All right, so when we do the evaluation, this is what we're looking for a property to be contributing or eligible for the National Register. So it must be at least 50 years old. So that's older than 1976. It must retain good architectural integrity, which is very jargon for does it look like it originally did? And sort of the test for that is we say, well, if the original owner came back, would they recognize it as the house they built? Or has it been changed so much that they don't recognize it anymore? Question.
But if they came, you kind of, if the family came and said, no, that's the house because it looked like that, notwithstanding the mark, the facade on it, that would take it out of the consideration.
Maybe.
Metal roof, siding.
Yes. Okay, let me get to the next point too, and then I'm going to address that. So actually, let me address that, and then I'll do this one. So that first bullet point under the second major one, minor additions or alterations may be acceptable. So, and usually I like to work in sort of the rule of 3, that if you kind of have 3 strikes against you on a historic building, you've probably gone too far. So if you replace the original roof with metal, which it probably didn't have, and then you've replaced the original windows with vinyl, and then you've, say you've added a garage to the side, but it's kind of in the back, it's not right up front, you've probably gone too far with all of those changes, that it's not retaining its integrity anymore of its original architecture.
Things like that.
Stucco can be one of those exterior, changes. One of the difficulties we have as architectural historians is judging when those changes are made. So for instance, if it was originally a house that was sided with masonite in the 30s, all right? And it, somebody said, I'm gonna, freshen that up. I don't want to paint it anymore, or some of them are chipped. And so they put siding on it, but maybe they did the siding in 1970. Well, now that siding is historic because it's older than 50 years old. So we're trying to judge, are those alterations, have they achieved significance by age, by their own right, by being that old? Or is it newer siding? And we can kind of tell that because really there's not a lot of aluminum siding anymore. It's all vinyl siding. So then we have to try to decide, okay, is that vinyl or aluminum, and try to read that. Yeah.
That first picture you had up there was the old Heber Light and Power plant,
Yeah.
which has already been destroyed.
Uh-huh.
That was another one. My grandfather actually was the caretaker of that, and
Oh, cool.
turbines going. But what do you do with those properties that are already gone? I mean, the property itself is still there. I can go right to the spot. But
Sure.
don't restore those. I mean, it's torn down already, so.
Yeah, so in our survey, we're only going to document what we see in the field. So we don't document anything that's gone.
All the thousands of pictures and stuff up. That's the history that we'll have of that.
Yeah. So we're only documenting the existing because we're interested in working with the buildings that are here because that is the most authentic history we have, is what's here now. So what's gone is gone, and we can't do anything about that. So, and so the second bullet point here, when we talk about additions and alterations, that we're very careful about is being fair and consistent in how we apply that. So if we apply the rule of 3 to one house, and then we go to the one next door, and we don't do that for some reason, then we're not being consistent, right? And so whatever methodology we start to employ in the field, we have to be consistent with that. And so that's part of the training that I give my staff, that I've always come with as part of a preservation ethic, that we don't want to rate something better than another building because of a style or who owns it or something like that. We have to be consistent. So that's what we hopefully give you and you see in the data. Last bullet point here is it's got to be significant in at least one area. We have these 3 area criterion that are given to us by the Park Service. So A is what we call patterns of history. So that's sort of social history, which we call, think of as religious history, educational history, commerce, things like that. Criterion B are significant people. And by significant people, they have to be really significant, like, US senators and that sort of thing to be criterion B significance. And then criterion C is the most often one used is for architecture. And we can use that as significant local architecture here in Heber. And so most things that will be eligible, you will see marked for criterion C.
Can you give examples of something? So would this building in particular, the tabernacle, be a criterion A, B, or C, or all of the above?
It would definitely be C and A. Yes. So C would be its primary significance. And we're only looking at exterior, remember. We don't consider interior at all. What happens?
Pattern, obviously, for criterion A, there's been a
Correct.
pattern of history consistent.
Yes. And criterion A, actually, there could be 2 different levels of significance. One could be its association with religious history for its early period, and its secondary history for its civic role in the community. So that can happen too. It can have multiple levels of significance or areas. Yep. All right. So here's where we're going to talk a little bit about what we do in the field. And this is just a random picture I picked out.
This is the house I was.
Oh, this is the one you told. That's so
This is
random.
my ancestor's house.
He was just telling me about that, the house. All right. So I thought it was a nice house when I saw it. I just, saw it online. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take this picture. All right. So we're standing in front of this house with a clipboard and we have our paper, and, you would be like, okay, what are we doing here? And so these are bullet points that'll just come up one by one too. So first, of course, we're going to record its address, right? And usually we have a whole series of maps with us too. And we double check that we're going in order right down a street, and we'll check those off. So we note the address. Then we are noting the age and date of construction. And so we look at it and we say, okay, well, when was this style prominent? in Utah? What are the features that we see? What are the materials that they're using? So we can start to try to date this. And it's just based on experience and knowledge that we're trying to date it in the field. And we'll go back, do the research, look at the old data, and we'll pin that down so that we get it right when we hand it in. But in the field, we'll look at it and say, oh, maybe 1870. That's what I'm going to guess. Ron probably knows.
What's that?
Date of construction.
1880, finished in 87.
87. Okay, 1870. I'm a little early. So, all right, yeah, good. All right, then we'll look at the integrity. And we'll say, okay, does it retain integrity, enough integrity? So we have the age and integrity test. Definitely yes. So this is eligible contributing based on date of construction and integrity. So it would qualify for criterion C. All right, next one. That's our evaluation is criterion C for sure. And then we start to think about criterion A. Maybe somebody important lived here. Maybe they were involved in commerce, or early settlement of the community. So we'd start to look into that for evaluation. Then we record all the materials. So what's our primary wall material here? Some sandstone. Secondary, probably wood for the wood trim. We note the roof materials, as asphalt shingle. If we can see the foundation, we'll note that. In this case, it's probably sandstone. We're too early for concrete. And I think that's about it. We'll note on materials. So next, style. So then we'll start to think about style. And what are those character defining features that point out the style? So its form is a cross wing, and that's pretty obvious. You have one wing that's coming out toward the street with the gable end, and then you have one that's intersecting it. In terms of style, probably classical revival or even Greek revival. Greek revival might be the better option on this one, from the cornice returns and the wide frieze board and the columns on the porch, and the window headers, the lintels. So there's a lot of very interesting detail here on this house for its early period. So it was someone prominent because they put in some work to the architecture, and it's still there. All right, next. Form, I already talked about cross wing form. Next, use. So we note that it's residential. And, in some cases, you'll have a residential building like this, and you'll note that its original use was residential, but its current use might be commercial. So we do that. Landscape features, if there's anything prominent that we see, sometimes there's a fountain or maybe some other, I don't know, piece of land. Fencing, yeah. We don't note any natural features like trees or anything like that. Maybe if there was a significant pathway.
Also, in some of these older homes, I know my husband's family, his uncle had a beautiful place in Springville, Utah, and they had the original horse post, I guess is what you would call it.
Oh, yeah.
They tie their horses
Yeah,
on
yeah.
there with the chain and everything. I mean, everything was attached to
Yes.
a sandstone feature.
Yes.
So would that be considered your?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. A hitching post.
Thank you.
A carriage stone. You ever hear of those, where you would step out of your carriage onto the stone? It's just a big block usually. Sometimes we see those. All right, next. And then, of course, outbuildings. So we'll note all garages, barns, sheds, very annoying things you don't like to see probably in people's yards, that sort of thing. So, and we do all that from the street. We take at least 2 photographs. If this is the only building on the property, we'll take one of the front just like this, straight on. And then we'll try to take an angled view to show the oblique or a side of the house. And then we'll take at least one of each outbuilding because we are required to count those. And so you will have a final count of all constructed buildings within this area in the data. All right, next. Are any questions about that? That's what we're doing, and we're trying to do that in less than 5 minutes. Hopefully 3 minutes per house, per building. So we're going fast. It's photos, write it all down, move on. So role of the commission. Maybe you guys have talked about this already, but these are the things that I think of when I definitely want to see involvement from the commission. You've already done a couple of those, of course. We're holding a public meeting here to have an update, and with the new dates that you have on the calendar, we'll continue to provide updates as we go. Of course, review and approve the final report. We'll present the findings to the public. And then most importantly, probably is that final bullet when we go away is, what do you do with all of this? Taking the next steps and finding unique and creative ways to use all of the information that comes from the survey. All right, next. Here's a list of the deliverables. They're the same as what came in the proposal. And there are numerous pieces. All of this gets delivered electronically, unless you want a hard copy. You guys can let me know if you do. And when we do that, we do print the photos on archival paper if you want to keep that in your file. But otherwise, yeah, it's all electronic. And as I do presentations, I will deliver those right after the meeting to the staff. And then you can share those as needed. All right, next. Our schedule. We're here in winter 2026 in phase 1 with we're just getting things rolling. We've done some initial research as well. Before we start phase 2. And that's when we were really gearing up for doing the field work. If we don't get any real winter, we might be starting earlier than we thought, which I know you guys would appreciate to get things rolling. So we're going to keep an eye on the calendar and the weather. And our internal calendar as well. We need time and space to open up for us to come out and do things. So, and then you can see I'll just jump to the end, phase 4, where we're going to end up in September, October with approval and submittal. We'll have a period there where we'll have review and comment on the final report and the data from all the partners. All right. So importantly, one of the questions we get asked a lot, whether it's in meetings or in the field, is, well, what you're doing, is that going to restrict me in the future? So what we're doing here in the survey does not have any bearing on anyone's private property. So we're merely recording and documenting what existing conditions there are that we see in the landscape. And so that does nothing for anyone. And so we want to make sure to let people know that this survey does not do anything. It only gives them information. So it does not place any restrictions. All right, next. All right, I've had people ask, well, how do I opt out? You know, how do I get you to stop taking a picture of my property or not include me in your final data? And there's not an option to that. You can't voluntarily opt out. We do everything from the public right of way. And so we're not doing anything that Google hasn't already done with Google Maps or something like that. So, and it is just merely data. So, and so people can't opt out. All right, that's it. I'm happy to answer questions, more about the details of what we do and how we plan to do it. Rachel?
So when you submit the final data,
Mhm.
it really is a map and an open data stamp. But it's not enough that we can take it to the next step and apply for the national. Just the data that we would then use to apply the next.
All of the data that we collect seamlessly translates to that next step if you were to go to the National Register Historic District. You would be utilizing the exact same data with updates. So say a house gets torn down in the meantime, you'd have to, you know, remove that from the list. Correct. Yes, it is a completely separate step that requires a higher level of documentation.
And if an individual property owner wanted to take the next step, the data that you are providing that enable them to do that easier. I know there's a fee though.
Correct. Yes. It does make it a little bit easier because once the final report is approved, we have in writing the SHPO has signed off on who's eligible and who's not for the National Register. So if you were a property owner and you saw your house on there and it clearly said you're eligible, then you know you could start the process of an individual nomination if you wanted to.
Can you just speak to the advantages of individual property owner compared to city or to go forward with that national district? What are the pros and cons to single property owner versus?
It's a fairly short list. Knowing the city's desire to get to the National Register district level of the process here, the positive side of an owner proceeding would be probably just time frame. That if the city needed to secure another grant and it was going to take another 6 months to get that, and the homeowner didn't want to wait because then maybe they have a pending rehab project that they really want tax credits for, then the time thing might be of essence to a property owner. On the other side, the city proceeding, the major positive for that process would be that, you know, really the city's investment in doing a historic district is the biggest bang for the buck for all these property owners in a district. Whereas you don't have one paying the fee for one nomination, you have the city doing it, and you just get so many more properties designated or listed for that cost in doing a district. And while it might take more time, maybe it won't, maybe it'll be, you know, happening right, it'll be time to be right after the final report, but you know, really the benefit is how many property owners you could help by the city doing the district. And so those are kind of the trade-offs I see.
I think it's important at this point to note, we only have 12 buildings on the 9 residential homes
Yeah.
and was putting together is so vital for the property owners that have missed out on tax credits. And we're talking that this isn't going to hurt Heber City's property tax. This is a federal tax program that historic property owners receive 30 to 40% tax payment reduction on their federal property tax. If the city was to proceed with the application and completion of a national historic district.
You could easily think of, if we're looking at 1,100 properties, at least 500 of those are going to be eligible. I mean, guaranteed, you're going to have half of that area being eligible. And so if you were to list, you know, if the final boundary for a National Register district was the same as the survey boundary, you would have at least 500 new properties on the National Register.
Kurt, let me ask you a question. I don't know if you can answer this. Can you think of any communities where you have done this procedure and they've gone and taken it through all of these steps? And I don't know, even if it's not Utah, but significant ones where this has really benefited and you have seen a complete change in that community because of applying these historic national, on top of state,
Yeah.
historic titles, if you will. Can you think of maybe 2 communities where this has really been a significant change in addition and has helped at long term for the community as a whole?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll go back to one of the very first historic districts in the whole state, which was the Avenues in Salt Lake City. And I mean, I've only read the stories. I did not live here in the 70s. But it was on a severe decline from apartment buildings, tear downs, flop houses in historic houses, you know, dividing mansions up into 13 units and all kinds of things like that. So, I mean, it was definitely a different time than now. But what really helped turn that around was the levels of designation in protecting the avenues. And then you brought in incentives on top of it for preservation. And people started investing in saving what was there. And, you know, it started attracting the people who wanted to live in neighborhoods of character rather than in new neighborhoods and who were willing to fix up old buildings. You know, to the point now where, you know, it's still one of the most recognizable historic neighborhoods in the whole state because of that turnaround. A more recent one, and sorry, it's another Salt Lake example, is the Yale Crest neighborhood.
Where?
Which is Yale Crest, which is Harvard Yale, south of the university. And, you know, it's, and so in the early 2000s, that was designated as a National Historic District, to over 2,000 buildings in that neighborhood. And it ranges from, you know, the most enormous, gorgeous mansions, you know, from the 1920s to little period bungalows and cottages, you know, 1,200 square feet. So a whole range of types of housing, but really built within about a 30-year period between 1915 and 1945, which is amazing to have that many houses built that quickly. And that's why it has this consistent character that people loved. And so that was part of the significance of the area. But of course, there was this enormous pushback after that came out, that people didn't want to be designated. There was a very pro-property rights backlash. After that, even though the National Register doesn't put any restrictions on a private property owner, people thought it was going to make it so they couldn't put in their windows or whatever. But there was a huge backlash, and but the data we have is that that neighborhood is the highest user of the state tax credit for residential buildings out of any place in the state. Now, there's a couple contributors to that. Okay, so we know people may not have expressed support for preservation right after that National Register nomination happened, but in time, they have come to learn that doing preservation is financially beneficial to them too. And so not only do we accomplish preserving the character of the neighborhood, but we save people money in doing it, and it helps them understand how to do that rehab the right way. Now, a couple other contributors to that is, of course, Yale-Crest, the socioeconomic status of people who live at Harvard-Yale is such that they could probably afford to do this work on their own, but they're savvy enough to know when they want to save money that they can do the paperwork. You know, they have the education level to do the paperwork, or they have people they can employ to do the paperwork. And so they take advantage of that. And so socioeconomic status, education level, you know, that all contributes to who uses the tax credit as well.
Have you seen also that it may not have been those original property owners, but maybe those who have transitioned later that have started to recognize and are more willing
sure.
to say,
Yes.
you know, let's do something about this. Let's use the opportunities that are there.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And a lot of times, I mean, it's out of state people who come in, and they come from the East, and they say, I cannot believe this is not a protected neighborhood, that I could just tear this house down, but why would I?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because in Virginia, this would have been, you know, landmarked 4 times. And you know, and they say, well, yeah, I mean, I just want to do the right thing. And if you want to give me money for it, great. So it's just a different approach to preservation we have here. It's more on the side of more carrots first and education. And let's see how many people we can get in to do the right thing. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Well, thank you, Kirk, for your time, this excellent presentation. I guess you mentioned we could get a copy of this slide.
I'll send it.
Okay, great. We can share that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. With that, if nothing else, we will adjourn this meeting today till our next meeting on April 20th. Thank you, everybody.